Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be checking out the GepRC Skip. GepRC have absolutely been crushing it with micros this year, and if you look in the video description, I'll put a list of all of their models that will not disappoint you. This is their take on the 3-inch HD toothpick, and seeing as the GepRC Phantom is my current favourite 2.5-inch toothpick, I have high hopes for this one. Starting off with the frame, and I already like what I see. We have proper arms instead of struts, which means there won't be any disturbed airflow. It's a unibody, but when you're trying to get the weight down, I think it's the only way to go. There's also a pre-installed silicone mat to stop your LiPo from throwing in a crash, and it also lifts the LiPo above the USB port of the flight controller and any screws. The Velcro strap isn't the best quality, but to get the weight down, it's necessary. I think the motors are my favourite of the year when it comes to micros, and have been the success of all of their other models. They are the 1105 5000 kV SpeedX GepRC branded motors, which can take a 3 to 4S LiPo. Now, I've said previously that 4S is bonkers on a toothpick. However, these motors have been absolutely stellar on 4S with their other models. So, if anyone can make it happen, then GepRC can. The propellers are the 3018 dual blades by GemFan, and GepRC stresses that you are not to use tri-blades on a 4S. I like these props anyways, so I'll be sticking with them, and you are given a spare set in the package. The ESCs and flight controller are GepRC's all-in-one board consisting of BL Heli S D-Shock 600 12-amp ESCs and an F4 flight controller, which is soft-mounted from the base and has a 330 microfarad low ESR capacitor soldered to the XT30 connector to combat any unwanted voltage spikes. It's come flashed with Betaflight version 3.57, which in my opinion is the best for micros, and it's set up as good as it can be. I still think you need to be accustomed to Betaflight to get it going, but there were only 3 changes that I made. The PID loop frequency was set to 8K 4K, and with this being an F4 flight controller, I changed it to 8K 8K. I had to change the channel map to TAER because that's just how my Tyrannus is set up. And this is the plug and fly version, so I added an XM Plus with the RSSI firmware, therefore I added the RSSI icon to the on-screen display. In fact, my only complaint so far with the plug and fly version is that it comes with a servo connector hanging out of the side, but there is no room anywhere to neatly mount a receiver with pins, so I had to cut off the connector and directly solder the wires to the receiver, and then it fits nicely underneath the canopy. I can even access the bind button through the holes in the top of the canopy. You can buy the Skip from Banggood with an XM Plus already installed, and GepRC sell it with a few different receivers. Just like all of the awesome GepRC models that have come out this year, they provide you with some straws, so there's no messing about mounting the receiver's antennas. These are a little bit too long because I stole them from the Cine King, but you can cut them down smaller than this. Above the all-in-one board is the Cadex Baby Turtle Whoop Edition. GepRC sell it with the Runcam Split Nano as well, if you prefer that camera. The Baby Turtle did come with its on-screen display turned on, which you don't need because the flight controller has Betaflight's on-screen display, but they do give you the controller board to turn that off. The FPV feed comes set to 4x3 out of the box, which is still plenty wide enough. However, if you are a 16:9 goggle user, then you'll want to change that because you'll get a wider field of view as well as a correct aspect ratio. The light frequency was set to 50 Hz. You usually have to match the refresh rate to the frames per second of the HD camera, which can only output 1080p at 60 FPS, and I use the rapid fire module with my Fat Sharks, which is really sensitive to stuff like this, but I'm going to leave it to see if it causes any problems. It also came set to auto record, which is how I like it. The micro SD card is easily accessible from the rear. The video transmitter looks like Happy Model's Diamond VTX, which switches from pit mode to 200 milliwatt. And finally, we have the Canopy. Now, when I first saw that it was made out of TPU, I was worried because GepRC has been the master at mounting CMOS cameras so that you don't get any jello through to your FPV feed, and in this case, the HD feed as well. But when you take a closer look, it's not actually that flexible, and they have mounted it correctly by having 4 points of contact to the frame, so it doesn't rock up and down unlike many models that just have 2 or 3 points of contact to the frame. But I'll have to wait for a sunny day to see if the model does suffer from any jello issues. It doesn't look like the camera angle can be changed that much, but it's deceiving, and it can be either quite flat or have a fairly aggressive angle on it. Either way, you are going to get the props in shot, so if you don't like that, then maybe this one isn't for you. The next one is why I love GepRC. They really think about how to build a good model. It's difficult to see, but the video transmitter's antenna has a small grommet placed into the TPU for stress relief, so that it doesn't yank the micro UFL connector off in a bad crash. GepRC recommends a 450 milliamp LiPo for both 3 and 4S, so I'm going to be using these tattoo LiPos. The model's dry weight is 74 grams and 114 grams with the 3S LiPo, so it's definitely within the ideal all-up weight window considering it's carrying a HD camera, and it's 129 grams with the 4S LiPo, which is slightly outside the ideal weight window for this class of model, but if it actually flies nice on 4S, then the extra power should give it ridiculous performance. I'm using their PIDs as well, and there is no separate PID profile for a different LiPo size, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Left in the box are the usual extras, so we have 2 sticky batt foam strips, an Allen key and a small screwdriver, along with a spare LiPo strap, a bunch of stickers, and the VTX channel chart. Okay, let's go for a line of sight with this guy. This is the Tattoo 450 milliamp 3S, and I'm just starting off in angle mode to make sure there's no problems. Let's go for a punch out. Oh yeah, very respectable power. So let's flick it into acro, see what it's like. Nice and quiet on low throttle. Not too bad on full throttle. No oscillations or anything like that. Always good news. See if I can get it close to us and then do a punch out. Just disappears into the abyss when it gets close to those trees. Have to be careful. Yeah, I think might be onto a winner here. Be interesting to see if it will actually perform or even fly on a 4S. It's flying nicely here. Not a ton of power, but enough, especially for freestyle. And I know these motors to be good from other GepRC models that they've used them on. Very reliable, good quality. And really this is to just give you an idea of what it sounds like, because my speed track won't pick it up. And I think it's important with these things to know how loud they are, especially on full throttle as well. But it's flying nicely. So let's bring it in for a landing. This is a Tattoo 450 milliamp 4S, and I'm standing back just in case it oscillates itself to the sky. So the moment of truth, let's arm it. Stay in an angle mode. I'm very low on the throttle. Well, Hasn't oscillated to the sky. That's interesting. So let's try a bit of power. Oh, no oscillations at all. Okay, let's try acro. No oscillations. Do I dare to do a punch out? Oh my goodness. That is ridiculous power. Now, I know these motors are capable of 4S and doing 4S, wow. Oh my goodness. But it seems like, at least line of sight, they are very capable of doing it on these dual blades, which is actually quite amazing. And if there's no voltage sag or minimal voltage sag to go with it, wow, that just disappears. Oh, I need to keep it out of the tree line because, as I mentioned before, it just becomes another twig when it gets in the tree line and it's far away like that. This is amazing. No oscillations at all. No change to the tune. Line of sight, at least. I must stress that. FPV can be a very different thing. It brings out stuff that you just cannot find line of sight because we're flying fairly slowly here. And the punch outs are vertical. Quite difficult to do a horizontal punch out because I'll just lose it in those trees over there. Oh, it's noisy though on 4S. It just disappears. I can't believe it. I'm not hearing any RPM sag whatsoever. Of course, sometimes you don't always hear voltage sag, you just see it in the on-screen display, so I'll have to see what that is like. But wow, flies on 4S, guys, and I've got a good feeling about this, you know. I don't know why. So little throttle to hover as well. Must be what? Oh goodness, 10-15% to hover. Right, let's bring it in for a landing and FPV this chappy. So this first flight was done with the 3S LiPo, and there's really nothing to complain about. It flies as smooth as anything with no prop wash, and the voltage stayed above 10 volts throughout most of the flight, even on long punch outs. I did have an issue with the Fat Shark DVR though. When I got back to review the DVR footage, it kept switching between black and white and colour. I obviously wasn't getting that through the goggles, otherwise I'd have landed. But just like I mentioned earlier, the reason the DVR recorded it like this is because the light frequency setting on the Cadex Baby Turtle was set to 50 Hz, and when I changed it to 60 Hz, there was no longer a problem. It just could be an issue that manifests itself with rapid fire, but I thought it's important to mention. Unfortunately, I couldn't go back and redo the flight because it has rained ever since, so you will have to take my word for it that the FPV feed was nice and clean and looked much better than this through the goggles. Although, just like most split cameras, in general the FPV feed is a little bit washed out compared to dedicated analog FPV cameras. I was really happy with the HD footage as well. It was a sunny day in challenging conditions due to the time of year, and I couldn't spot any jello, and it did a really good job with the dynamic range as well. The flight time was really long, being just shy of 5 minutes with the 3S LiPo, but the audio wasn't too impressive, so I'll let you have a little listen to see what you think of that. milliamp meter was completely bang on. So at the end of this flight, go and check out the total milliamps drawn through the on-screen display. And then after this flight, I tried the model out on the 4S 450 milliamp tattoo LiPo, and I was astonished that it flew really well and had absolutely bonkers power. I think there was a little bit of prop wash creeping in with some maneuvers, but I'd say overall this is a near flawless product, and it is by far my favourite 3-inch toothpick released to date. And again, the flight time was over 5 minutes with the 4S LiPo. So I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. I thoroughly recommend it, and as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.